So I had just sold the business, and I saw a headline in the newspaper that said two dragons were stepping down. And I have watched Dragon's Den since inception in 2004. Love it as a business education program. Would always discuss it with my team on a Monday morning. Did you see that? Entrepreneur, he forgot his numbers and so on and so forth. And so I saw the headline that two dragons were stepping down. And I said to my head of marketing then, I'd love to do that. That'll be my seat, won't it? And she said, I'm going to phone the BBC now. And I said, oh, no, I was only joking. She said, no, you weren't joking. And I'm going to phone the BBC now. So she got me a slot for a screen test. Well, in fact, first of all, they said, oh, no, the screen testing's all lined up this week and we're full. This is, too late. And I said, I will come in the evening. I'll come first thing in the morning, but you need to screen test me. So I squeezed my way in there the night before they actually started the screen testing. And yes, I was offered the role. And actually, the producer said to me afterwards, we knew as soon as you walked in the room that you were our dragon.
Hi Jenny, thank you so much for coming onto the platform. You are the founder and CEO of Your Cash Europe, and you're also a former dragon on the hit BBC show Dragon's Den. Thank you so much for coming on.
You're very welcome. Thank you for inviting me.
So thank you. So at the age of 16, you actually left school to work in the banking sector.
Mm-hmm.
You worked in the sector for 30 years. And you were also credited for playing a vital role into integrating NatWest into the Royal Bank of Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you decide to leave this career to then become an entrepreneur?
Well, as you say, I've been with the bank for 30 years in various roles, both regionally and then latterly in head office in London. And, there was a few events happened at that time. And one of them was the 7/7 bombings, actually, which spooked me in terms of transport into the city. It spooked me in terms of getting buses and tubes and so on. And I was a little bit tired of the commute as well, 8-9 years of trains in and out of the city. So, and I'd also completed the integration work with RBS and NatWest, which was real high velocity, but really really enjoyable work. And so there was a little bit of a what's next moment, as well as I think I want to stop commuting. I think I want to get out of the city. So I was looking for something else, and this other opportunity came out that was still within the RBS group, but was at a subsidiary company in Milton Keynes, and it was a chance to just go out to be part of a very small business. And instead of being, a small cog in a very big wheel in the headquarters of Royal Bank of Scotland, I would be going to a business which had 150 people, and I went in as a number 2 in charge initially. And you get to see a small business from end to end, from the product it sells right through to, its operations and its finance and its marketing. So, as I walked through the front door of that business, it felt very much like a job I'd done for the bank probably 10 years previously, when I used to be a business banking relationship manager. And I used to walk into businesses like this to assess their financial needs. But now I was walking in as the chief operating officer of a business which RBS still owned at that point. So it was time for a change. And I'm always one who goes and seeks those changes rather than wait for them to come to me.
Thank you. And you actually turned Hanco ATM systems into Your Cash Europe, which you then sold for 50 million.
Uh-huh.
So what influenced your decision to relaunch this business into Your Cash Europe?
Well, I wanted to rename it when we bought the business. I went to the business when it was called Hanco and it was owned by RBS. 4 years later, we bought the business, really, again, instigated by some outside events. The financial crisis meant that business became non-core for Royal Bank of Scotland, but I was thoroughly enjoying working there. We'd done a lot of hard work to turn it around from loss-making to breaking even. And there was a moment in time where I was no longer proud to call myself a banker, let alone an RBS banker. And so I loved what I was doing, and we did a management buyout of the business in 2010. And we felt it was the right time to change the name then, because the name of the business, Hanco, didn't mean anything to anyone apart from the original founder 10 years previously, because it was part of his surname. And we used to find that when we phoned customers up and said, it's Hanco here, they said, "What? Who's that?" They thought we said Kenco, the coffee maker, if you remember them. So, I wanted something that resonated with the future and with the product we sold and so on. So my business was cash machines. And so light bulb moment as I was driving somewhere, and I thought, well, customers go to the cash machine and pull out their cash, your cash. So, and I remember reading the Richard Branson story where he, wrote the word virgin on a, napkin in a restaurant somewhere. And I could envisage this your cash just being in a sort of similar scribble, and that's how it turned out when we branded it up as well.
And another thing that's incredible is that you turned Hanco ATM systems from a struggling business into Your Cash Europe, which you then sold for 50 million. How did you do that?
Hard graft and just, picking apart every piece of the business. So when I went there in 2006, the business was 6 years old. It had been a startup in 2000. It had grown very fast under an American entrepreneur and had been successful. Hence, RBS bought it in 2004. But internally, it was in a mess. It wasn't like I was used to in a corporate. The IT systems were really poor. There was no real processes for anything, bits of paper and, things that weren't followed through. The people weren't a great quality of people either. They didn't have any codes of conduct and standards and so on. So I was the operations director, so I was able to get right underneath the skin of this business. And, I started lots of little projects, improving each part of the process, from when we, placed a machine somewhere to making sure it was operational 24/7, to having great people in the business who, knew how to operate to a corporate level. And in fact, I brought in this strap line which said that we must live by corporate standards but breathe as entrepreneurs. So the business had grown big enough to need to have those corporate standards. But we still competed with 6 or 7 other businesses in the UK and needed to remain nimble as well. We couldn't afford to be a juggernaut bank, if you like. So we needed to remain nimble as well. So, as I say, lots of projects to improve things. And the business was losing 7 million when I first went there. By the time we bought the business, it was just about breaking even. And we could see the potential for it to continue to go upwards and make some nice profits, which is what we did over the 6 years we then owned it as a management team.
And just following on from that quickly, so that you had competitors that worked against, Your Cash Europe in the market. What do you think separated your company from the other companies that were competing in the same sector?
Well, probably the journey it had been on, in that it had been bought by a bank, it had been institutionalized, so it had become a very smart outfit whilst retaining its personality and its entrepreneurship. Whereas I think the other businesses were never corporatized and were still, relatively operating in a relatively small business way. So we were very professional when we turned up at our potential clients' premises. And then, the operation following that, the agreement forms, the product packs, the machine itself, the branding, how people answered the phones, all of that became professionalized, I would say. And I think that enabled us then to win market share.
Thank you. And you sold Your Cash Europe for 50 million. How difficult was it for you to sell a business that you started?
Well, once I bought the business, I regularly got questions from professional advisors around when do you think you might sell this business? And I regularly got visits from my competitors to say, when might you sell this business? And in the early days, certainly for the first 3 years, 2010 to 2013, I said, I'm having a lot of fun. I really love what I do. I'm only early 50s or something, I think, at that time. I can still see myself doing this for a long time. And then I think, 2013 onwards, we did a secondary buyout where we bought out our first investors, put some new investors in, and they were definitely investors that wanted to see their money out in, 3 to 5 years' time. And I also started to think about, well, by the time I've been here 10 years, which was sort of around 2016 when I sold the business, and I'm probably 56 by then, I was thinking, I actually still want to do life beyond this business. I know I've got other things that I want to do. And therefore, the longer I stay past that, you need to pick your timing in the market when, there is the opportunity there. And so, I started courting some of these offers. And I could see in 2016 it was a good time to sell. We were at a good place in terms of our market share and into the countries that we had grown into by then. We were in 4 countries, including UK, Netherlands, Belgium, and Ireland. I guess we were, at the peak of where we've been for 10 years. And I was always taught, when you get to that point, leave something for somebody else on the other side as well. So it's a bit like that TV program where you say bank it, and you need to bank it quick before it goes down. So we had some attractive offers, and I thought I was 10 years in. It had been 10 hard years, quite frankly, and I wanted time to have space on the other side to do 2 other things. So it was time to take that offer. And actually, looking back, as a lot of people say to me, the timing was excellent. The timing was really good because it was only a few years later that we were into COVID, and that certainly affected cash an enormous amount. And we would not have got that same value for the business even 2 to 3 years later. So, I know I got out on a high. Thank you.
And in an interview at the Times, you discussed your approach to saving and spending. Has your perspective remained the same over time?
Remind me what I said. I saw that question and I thought, well, what did I say at that
time? So you basically talked about to never take money for granted.
Yeah, and look, I come from not necessarily a humble background, but certainly a grounded background where my mum and dad worked very hard to put us through private school, but they both had to hold down 2 full-time jobs and some part-time jobs to do that. And we were taught as children to work hard in order to achieve. And that's what we did. I was working in a corner shop by the time I was 13, and that probably gave me the impetus to want to leave school at 16 and get to work and climb the career ladder. So and we, I got married when I was 21 and 2 children, and so I've been there, knowing what it's like to run a family household, and just about have enough money to live on, frankly, to pay the mortgage, to pay the car loan, to pay the nursery fee. So having to budget every month. So I don't just take it for granted that there's now money in the bank. I plan that carefully, and we don't squander it. And, I'd like the children to have a bit behind them when they're older. And by the time that family grows with grandchildren and so on, you can soon go from having, a decent amount behind you to it being frittered away. So I would say I still live by that, to, never take it for granted, and look after your money and spend it and save it wisely.
Thank you for that. That's actually really inspirational. And following on from that, you were a dragon in the 15th and 16th seasons of Dragon's Den. You're also a very popular dragon. So how did you come to join the hit show?
Well, I often get the question when I do my keynote speeches about, what was it like when you got the call? And I say, no, you don't realise that everything that happens to me happens because I've made it happen. And I don't just say that glibly. I went to work in London in head office of the bank because I wrote to a senior lady there and I said, your story in our bank magazine really inspires me. You've got 2 children and how have you achieved such great heights? And because of that, she invited me into London and I got a job in head office, and it went from there. So I'm always one for making things happen for myself. And I say that to people, don't wait for things to happen for you. You make it happen. So I had just sold the business, and I saw a headline in the newspaper that said 2 dragons were stepping down. And I have watched Dragon's Den since inception in 2004. Love it as a business education program. Would always discuss it with my team on a Monday morning. Did you see that? Entrepreneur, he forgot his numbers, and so on and so forth. And so I saw the headline that 2 dragons were stepping down. And I said to my head of marketing then, I'd love to do that. That'll be my seat, won't it? And she said, I'm going to phone the BBC now. And I said, oh, no, I was only joking. She said, no, you weren't joking. And I'm going to phone the BBC now. So she got me a slot for a screen test. Well, in fact, first of all, they said, oh, no, the screen testing's all lined up this week and we're full, this is, too late. And I said, I will come in the evening. I'll come first thing in the morning, but you need to screen test me. So I squeezed my way in there the night before they actually started the screen testing. And yes, I was offered the role. And actually, the producer said to me afterwards, "We knew as soon as you walked in the room that you were our dragon." So yeah, so I made that happen for myself. And yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the two series that I did on the Den.
And what was your experience on the show?
From the moment you walk around the sort of producer's curtain onto the set and see those five chairs there, there's a bit of a gulp, and you think, gosh, I'm here, I've arrived, sort of thing. And so, you can't help but be a bit overawed by that initially. But I soon settled in. I've always been reasonably comfortable in front of the camera. I did quite a bit of camera work and PR work when I had the business. So, that didn't faze me. And people used to say, "Oh, how do you feel when the cameras are pointing at you?" And I'd say, I don't notice it. They're all up the sides of where we are, and they're peering through little peepholes and so on to get those little cameo shots. And I said, as soon as those entrepreneurs walk through the door, I'm totally focused on them. And to me, that part of the process was just like when I was a bank manager and I used to go and sit in front of entrepreneurs and say, "Tell me about your business." It was just exactly the same thing. So I felt quite comfortable in that. And it was just about then finding your place amongst the other four dragons of when to come in with your question. And of course, they like you to spice it up a bit as well. And there's no point doing a boring job interview that, you will get told at the breaks to be more dragon-like and so on, because it is TV at the end of the day. So they want to have a bit of entertainment with it as well.
And what were your most memorable moments on the show?
Probably when I landed my first deal. I realized pretty quickly that these entrepreneurs coming through the door, if you were going to bid for this business and if you were bidding against, let's say, the old timers, as I will fondly call them, Deborah and Peter. And so say, I had both Deborah or one of Deborah and Peter bidding as well as me. I learned quite quickly that these entrepreneurs are quite wowed by the Peter and Deborah brands, who am I sort of thing. And I needed to work harder at saying why they should choose me. So when the first one does choose you, especially over one of the other longer time dragons, you think, great, I've landed my first business. So, that feels good. And then you start thinking about your strategy for landing more businesses after that. And what sort of portfolio of businesses do you want as well? So you kind of just settle in then. And then, there's funny moments as well when you can't quite understand what is being said, or you can't quite. I remember during that period, I got myself contact lenses because I couldn't quite see the products on the table, and I didn't want to keep putting my glasses on and off. So I have to sort that. I need to get some contact lenses. So yeah, there's little things you grow into the role as you do it more and more.
And why did you leave? Why did you leave Dragon's Den?
Well, the BBC wanted me to do a third series. They really wanted me to do a third series, but by the time I got to the end of the second series, by that time I had 5 businesses. I'd bid for 12. We had done the due diligence on 12 and we'd signed on 5. They drop away for different reasons, sometimes on my part, sometimes on the entrepreneur's part, but I had 5 active businesses. And I always said to the entrepreneurs, look, I've just sold and left my business. I don't have a team of people behind me. What you get is me. Personally, I will be coming to your board meetings. I will be on the phone with you. I will be giving you my help and advice. The inference was if you choose Peter or Deborah, they've got teams of people behind them supporting them, and you really don't see a lot of them because they've got a lot of businesses and that's not physically possible. So by the end of the 2 series, I had 5 businesses that I was actively involved in. I had worked for 30 years in the bank, 10 years in the cash machine business. And I thought I was sort of going to semi-retire. And all of a sudden, I was as busy as I ever was with these 5 businesses, meetings and visits and so on and so forth. And I thought, do you know what? Hand on heart, I can't honestly sit in that chair for a third series and say that I want any more businesses. I really can't. And I didn't want to sit there and be, disingenuous about that and just sit there for a series and pick one business. I didn't want to do that. Those entrepreneurs put a lot of time and personal energy into landing a dragon. So I just felt that I had my 5 active businesses and I didn't have the appetite to take more on my own. And therefore it was time to step aside.
I know that you invested in 5 businesses, but I also know that one of your investments was one of the most successful Dragon's Den businesses, the one that you invested in with, I believe it's Tej. You invested in a business that then sold.
Was that the Karen, the CBD?
Yes, I
Yeah,
think it was that one.
yeah. That suited us both to be involved in that because Tej was in the well-being business. I'm quite receptive to alternative medicines, if you like. And the chap on there, he'd had a an industrial accident and a lot of pain that he seemed to resolve through CBD products. And I actually spoke to my niece, who was a GP, and asked her opinion on what she thought of CBD products, and she was very positive about it. So, I thought the entrepreneur was very authentic. If I recall, he was from Czech, which was where his supply line was from as well. So he had very organic, authentic products as well. So we worked with him for a while. And then we actually managed to sell that business up to a bigger CBD entity where he could continue to flourish and take more of the market because he was a single man band as well, and you can't conquer the market when you're a single man band. So he became that part of an entity, and after about 18 months, I think we found an exit that suited him and suited us as well.
Thank you for that. And would you ever return to Dragon's Den?
You know, I would return in a sort of guest slot type position. They do that sometimes if one of the dragons is poorly or can't complete the whole schedule. So I don't think I'd want to do a full series again, although you never say never. And actually, I have all my Dragon's Den investments have now just about completed. So I don't have any Dragon's Den investments anymore. So, I never say never. I've done other things since the Den. I've been on Question Time, which was another one to sort of tick off. Actually sat in what I call Piers Morgan's chair on Question Time. So I did that at one point, and I do a lot of keynote speaking. So I think probably now my Dragon's Den portfolio is cleared, and I've got less on, and I've had a bit of free time now since I sold the business, exited Dragon's Den. Got my hobbies up and running at home. Maybe if I got the call for a guest slot, then that might be a positive response.
Just touching on your hobbies, what are your hobbies outside the business?
Well, I've always loved my dogs. I grew up with dogs. I got my own dogs at 16. I probably looking back, wanted to be a farmer and/or wanted to be a vet, and I did neither of those things. But I'm a big animal lover, so I bred and showed dogs before I was married for about 5 years. Then I didn't do anything for about 25 years because I was too busy with career, family, running a house, etc., etc. But I got, as the boys got older, I was able to put more time and energy back into the dogs from about 2004 onwards. So wind forward 20 years now, I've got 4 dogs in the room downstairs, 4 flat-coated retrievers, all girls. Their brothers all live with a friend of mine in the next county. We go to Crufts every year. I breed, show, judge, work my dogs. So that's a very big part of my life. And then during COVID, I was watching This Farming Life and I saw these fancy sheep on TV. And I think I was drinking red wine as well at the time. And I thought, I really love those sheep. They look like dogs, but they live outside in a field and I can have lots of them and I can show them and so on. And so now I started with 3 and now I have 22 fancy sheep as well. So they keep me busy.
And you're also really into charity, so you've done work with the Prince's Trust and other charities as well. Why is charity so important to you?
Well, in 2014, I won Business of the Year award, Businesswoman of the Year award, and from that moment, I got a lot of approaches to get involved in a whole host of charities. Quite overwhelming the requests were at first, and I went away on holiday and sort of thought I need to think about what to do here because I can either get involved in lots of things and not make a big difference, or I can get involved in a few smaller things that I feel I can add value to and make a bigger difference. So I decided that if I was going to get involved in charities, it would have to draw on my experience, which is business, entrepreneurship. And I'm also very keen on helping young people to achieve more than they think they can achieve, and particularly disadvantaged young people. So I got involved with the Entrepreneur of the Year scheme with Ernst Young Accountants, first of all. And then I got involved with a smaller charity called Tomorrow's People. And then I got involved with the Prince's Trust, now the King's Trust, which really makes a massive difference to young people. And so, I've supported that for a long time. I know from experience that when I meet young people who are just a little bit uncertain or lacking in confidence or a bit confused about where they're going, it really doesn't take a lot of, time to just talk to them and give them that assurance and give them a bit of focus for them to, say, yeah, I can do that. And that's where I was when I was 20. I was inspired by people who were already achieving, and whether it was reading their book, I read Duncan Bannatyne's book back then. He was still an ice cream man aged 30. And, I'd read Richard Branson's books, and I read the story of this female executive in NatWest and wrote to her and said, you're 10 years older than me, you've achieved so much, I'm inspired by you. So, I know it didn't take a lot for me to feel inspired and then push to achieve more. And so that's what I try to sprinkle my pixie dust on young people, is what I say.
That's really inspirational. And if you could give advice to your younger self, what would it be?
Probably to deal with the knocks, or just accept you're going to get the knocks and deal with those. I did have knocks along the way. I had knocks because I was female. I had knocks because I spoke with a northern accent, certainly when I was in London. I had knocks because I had two pregnancies whilst I was trying to pursue a career. So that was sometimes hard. So I've had to deal with all those sort of equality type issues. I think, if I had my time over, I think I've done quite well anyway, but I'd just tell my younger self to be strong and learn from those. As I always say, what doesn't kill you, makes you. So, or graze your knees and get up, rub yourself down and move on.
Thank you for that. And the last question is, please tell us about any other ventures or projects you'd like to tell my audience about during this interview.
Oh, well, both my sons are entrepreneurs now. Which I'm very proud of. My eldest son, Rick, has a number of restaurants in London. Started 7 years ago. He's not the chef, but he loves hospitality. So he has a business partner chef, and he runs all the front of house, and he qualified as accountant. So he can get the numbers right. 7 years ago when he started, we used to say to people, oh, my son's got restaurants, our son's got restaurants, and they're called Kricket with a K, and they're in Soho and Brixton and so on. And now, 7 years later, as soon as we say Kricket, people say to us, oh, we know that, we've been there. So he's on the map already. He has 150 staff and he's doing multi-million turnover. So I'm very, very proud of him. And the young ones, he took age 13, he said, I'm going to build houses. And that's exactly what he's doing. He's building houses. So I'm very proud of them both. Neither of them, I don't think, could ever be 30 years in banking or a profession. They've, become, my young proteges, I think. So, I'm very proud of that. And as coming back to, I'm always very proud of any young entrepreneurs that, make it a success.
Thank you so much, Jenny, for such a great interview and coming onto my platform.
You're very welcome. Good luck with everything, Micah.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.